All right. Hello, everyone. Today we're going to be going over the process of the line art for our animation production. So over here, you can see that I've already laid out our rough animation. Then we're going to be going over and lining this rough animation. So I won't be lining everything, as that's going to be the job for the assistant animators. What I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be detailing on the process of how we're going to be doing the line art. So just before we start, I would just like to get this out of the way. I'm going to delete this column first. Then I'm going to hit the render icon so that we can see what our animation rough currently looks like. So currently it looks like this. Alright, enough of that. So before we start on with me explaining how we're going to be lining over all of the roughs, I'm first going to be explaining or giving a quick crash course per se on how we're going to be making use of vectors. So as we've earlier discussed, for our production process, we're going to be making use of the We're going to be making use of the vector layer or vectors when we're doing the line process. So why is that? So normally what most people do is make use of raster. And when we use raster, it's a little bit more complicated to edit the line, right? If we want to manipulate the lines, the line quality could get destroyed, and we can't exactly manipulate the width of the line or the curvature of our line, or how our line is drawn. So with vectors, we don't really have to worry about drawing the perfecto line. We just have to worry about getting the line good, You don't have to keep going over drawing the line, because you make the line once and then you can manipulate the line so that it goes along with our drawing. And not only that, but you can edit the width or the thickness of your line, and also you can manipulate other things about the line that you can't do on raster. With vector, you can manipulate the texture of our line, aka the quality of our line, whether it be scribbly or neat and tidy. And we can also manipulate other things such as the color of our line without having to go through the tedious process of let's say paint bucketing. Or no, that's gonna happen. But anyway, there are a lot of things that vector offers which can improve the quality of life of our animation, and of course really save us on budget. Because with raster, it's also going to be a lot harder when it comes to the coloring process. But with vector, we have a lot of time saved when it comes to the coloring. So what you need to worry, however, is getting the shapes and the lines done. You have to make sure that lines, which are supposed together, will form a shape, right? What do I mean by that? So let me pull out this reference real quickly. So we have the main cast. So what do I mean when I say lines that should go together, should connect with each other? So let's take Kron's head, for example, right? We want to make sure that these lines connect, because after which we're going to paint bucket over it, and it should correctly output as her head, for instance, right? It should show the correct color placement of her head. There are times in vector wherein you might think your lines are, they're connected and all, but no, it turns out they're not connected. And I'm going to be showing you a way of fixing that, and I'm also going to be showing you another method of making sure our lines are closed. So this method involves making use of shapes rather than individual lines, but we're going to be going over that. Alright, so before I discuss the workflow, I'm going to be giving you a small crash course again on how vectors work, just to keep us in track. Alright, so before that, we're going to want to make a new vector layer. So click on our current level, and then click just about anywhere here. Then this should right click. This should bring this menu out, right? We're going to be selecting on new level. You can alternatively, you can also, use Alt plus N on your keyboard if you're using Windows. If you're using Mac, I'm sorry, I don't know. So click on new level, and then this should bring out this pop-out window, right? The new level pop-out window. So we have a few things going on here, but we're going to be concerned about our name and our type. All right, so name, this is basically the name of our level. We can just name this vector Lineart level. Yeah. So type, this is of course the most crucial part. So normally you'd be on the raster level, but since we're working on vector, we're going to click down on the type drop down. It should give us these 4 options. So don't mind these. We're only concerned about the tunes vector level. So again, change the name. So again, when we create a new level, we want to change the type to vector level. And it's up to you if you want to rename your level, but I'm just going to name it. Okay, so hit apply. Hold on. Is there like, no? Oh, sorry. Let me just go back on that. Vector. From Despicable Me. Vector. Layer. Okay. We have vector layer. We've selected our tunes vector layer. Hit apply. Then you should see this new column pop out. It's going to have this brownish, yellowish, looks like poop color. Sorry about that. Over here, right? This should indicate that this level is now on vector mode. So click cancel. So why click cancel? If you're going to click apply, that's going to create a new column. So if you don't believe me, let me just click apply. You're going to see a new column. So just hit cancel, right? Let me just get rid of that. Okay. All right. So we can now go on to discussing vector and of course the vector lines. All right. So normally when we use raster, we're going to be making use of the brush tool. However, for our vector process, we're going to be making use of the geometric tool, which is found below the brush tool in our toolbar section. Excuse me. Okay, excuse me. Some gas just passed through my mouth. All right. So let me show you why we're going to be making use of the geometric tool instead of the brush tool. So I'm sorry, there are dogs barking. Sorry if you hear this. All right. Then we draw normally with a brush tool. All right. So before I go on to drawing the line, I'm going to first explain what's going on here. So this looks normal, right? Just any other line. But as I said, we're going to manipulate the line. So in manipulating our line, we have these things called control points. And these control points are what makes our line it basically lets us manipulate our lines. Okay, so let me just show you how you can manipulate our lines by going to our control point editor, or you can also just hit C on your keyboard. That's going to prompt out the same thing. All right, control points. Let me show them to you. Bam. These white things are called control points, and these blue things that are connected to them, to these control points, are called handles. So again, control points and handles. You can also, just click on this blue line thingy, and then you can manipulate your line like that. All right. So as you can see with our line, we have a whole bunch of control points, right? And this is going to be a nightmare to work with. So we want to have the minimum number of control points possible. Why? So what happens when you have way too many control points? Well, I'll give you 5 seconds to guess. But this isn't Dora, so I'm just going to go over. If you have way too many control points, chances are they're going to get clustered like this, or even just like this. Already, this is a nightmare to work with. But this is your sleep paralysis demon. Okay? So let's say you want to, extend this part, right, in a clean way, making sure it's clean and neat. If you select the control point, that's how I do that. It's going to be difficult to manipulate these lines. And if you want to use the blue line to manipulate everything, chances are you see it. the line is getting destroyed, and you're going to have to manually clean it up like that. Let's say you want, let me show you a demonstration. Let's say you want to, I don't know, say you want to make a heart. So you're gonna make a heart with your brush tool, and then you say, oh, this this heart's kind of ugly, and you want to edit it using the control points. Well, I'm sorry, my dear, but that's gonna be a bit hard. As you can see, trying to clean out the control points to make sure it's clean and properly curved is gonna be a nightmare. So what's the solution to this? That's where the geometric tool pops out. So the geometric tool provides us a whole array of shapes and of course lines. So by default, we're going to want to make use of line. Why? Well, this is going to make our life a whole lot easier. So geometric shapes give us a more controlled way of creating control points. Why is that? As you can see, when we create a line, we only have 2 control points, right? So that's a lot easier to work with, because when we want to bend or do stuff, it's clean. It's not going to be a nightmare to work with. As for this, if we want to, maybe extend this curve, it's going to be a whole nightmare to work with. Okay. So, again, the reason why we're using geometric shapes is so that we have a controlled set of control points, right? So, aside from that, it's hard to get rid of these control points. There's no manual way of getting rid of them. Let's say I just want to delete this so that, you may be thinking, oh, you can just delete this control point and then bam, these 2 are gonna be like a clean, smooth curve. Well, the thing is, you can't clean out control points. I've gone over the documentation and I've tried going over other materials, but as far as I have searched far and wide through the interwebs, there is no way of getting rid of just one control point and then making it smooth out. The only way I could do that is probably with the eraser. But then again, it's gonna erase a whole bunch of other things. That's why we're gonna want to make use of our line or our geometric tool. Okay, so let me just get rid of that. Okay. So let me discuss another thing, which is controlling handles and control points. So I'm gonna make a small demonstration. Okay, let's say you're lining over here. Excuse me. All right, so we have our line. When we're lining, we want to make sure that we're getting the most evident parts or where our control points might be. So let's say for instance, I'm lining Kron's head, right? This is going to be an evident part where the control point is going to be, and as well as her chin. Then you're going to be like, oh, well, what about around her cheekbone? How am I going to do that? Well, fortunately, while there is no way to get rid of control points, there is, however, a way to add these control points. So on your keyboard, click Control or CTRL, and then hover, and then, hold on, let me just also remember to be in the control point editor mode. You'll know if you're in the control point editor mode because you'll see this blue streak, this blue line in the center. All right, so going back, if we want to add a control point, which is one of these line thingies, so that we can manipulate the shape, hit Control on your keyboard and then hover near the blue line on the center. So you should see a add icon nearby the cursor. So then click where you want your control point to be. For instance, I want it to be here nearby the cheekbone. Click, and then you'll get this new control point. So here's also another neat thing you can do. Sorry. So these handles, sometimes they may be a pain in the ass to work with, right? It might be a little, let me just show you. Alright, so over here, it can be easy to work with handles. You can use handles to manipulate the shape. So our control points rely on these handles to manipulate the shape of our line. But let's say you're going for something sharper. Let's take, for instance, her. Let me. Okay. Let's say you're working with her ear, for instance. So let me get, just for the sake of speeding things up, polygon. And then let me just rotate that a bit. Oops. Alright. So, sorry. Let's say we're working on the ear. Let me just get rid of this. I'm just using triangle tool to make it a lot quicker. Alright, let's say you're working with the ear. And then, this is our ear. Alright, so there are going to be times when we want, let's say for instance, to get rid of our control point, right? Maybe it's so that we could, I don't know, we just want to get rid of it to, let's say, create a sharper or more angular look to it. So we can do that by hitting Alt, which is the Alt key on your keyboard. Hitting Alt, it should prompt out this triangular looking icon. And then hover over the control point where you want to get rid of the handle. So let's say I don't want the handles of this control point, and you want to make this a whole lot sharper. Bam. Okay, wait. Sorry about this example. Let me go over this again with the circle tool. Alright, so I'm gonna go over this one more time because that was a failure of an explanation. I'm sorry. So going over with our circle, we're gonna be using our circle tool for this demonstration. Cool. Okay, so going to our control point editor mode, clicking on the circle. Let's say you want to make the one of these points sharper. Let's say over here. Normally, is if we just drag it out, it's not gonna be any more sharper, right? What we want to do is click, so it's not gonna be sharp, right? It's gonna be rounded. No matter how I can try with the handles, but that's difficult. So how do I do this? You could try adding another control point, but again, we try adding another control point and say, yeah, that should do the thing. But again, if our goal is just to make this end sharper, we don't want way too many control points. Once again, it's going to be hard to edit by the end of it. So what we do is we can get rid of the handles. By getting rid of the handles, we can then make the line going to this control point a lot sharper. So how do we do that? Hitting Alt on our keyboard, the cursor should change into a triangle. So then hover on one of the control points. Let's say here, for instance. Let's say we want to make this control point sharper. So again, hit Alt on your keyboard, hover over your chosen control point, and then click on it. So then, as you can see, it's a whole lot sharper, and we're getting the result that we want. Okay. So another thing, our handles will affect each other. What if you want to make this handle independent from this, which means you don't want this handle to affect the line of this? Let's say you're satisfied with this, but you just want to, you want this one to, let's say, go up. You want this one to go up without impacting it. So how do we do this? Well, first, we're going to be getting rid of the handles. So again, hitting Alt on your keyboard, click on the control point that you want. Bam. It should make it sharp, but we're going to bring back the handles real quick after. So again, how do we bring back the handles then to make these handles independent from each other? Click on Alt on your keyboard. It should bring out the triangular cursor again. Click on your control point, and then you should get the handles once more. Now this time, the handles will be independent from each other, which means this handle isn't affecting this handle. So as you can see, we are getting the result that we want. We can also do this, that. Then if we want to make the handles affect each other again, we can just hit Alt and then click on the handle. And then we can see it is once again affecting the other handle. Alright. So that's about it for handles and control points. Let us now talk about how we can change the width of our lines. Alright. So I'm going to be using I'm just gonna be using this line as an example. All right. So there are two kinds. There are two methods rather, wherein you can affect the size of our line. So one method is by resizing the entire line equally, which means everything goes smaller. Another method is by resizing only parts of the line, which means only a certain part, let's say this portion of the line, gets smaller. So, method number one. In method number one, we want everything to become equally smaller or larger. So, how do we do this? Going over to our selection tool, which is this arrow icon on our toolbar, or we can just simply press S on our keyboard. We click on our line. We should see this gray icon over here nearby this part. Most of the time it's gonna be on the lower right end. So click on that. We should see this pump icon, or the cursor changing basically to this pump icon rather. Then click on it, and then we can drag our mouse down or up. As we can see, the line is getting equally thicker and equally smaller. Let's say we want to make the entire line small. You can do that. So what if you want to make only parts of it bigger or smaller? Let's say I want to thicken up this part, maybe. So how do we do that? We can accomplish that through the use of a pump tool. So the pump tool is this pump icon over here in our toolbar. That's our pump tool. Then we hover over to the portion of the line we want to thicken or to make skinnier, narrower, whatever. So let's say I want to thicken up this portion. So using our pump tool, we just drag it up, and then, oops, that's too much. As you can see, we are making the line thicker. So let's say we want to make this smaller. We hover over and then click and then drag it down. Then it becomes smaller. So we can click anywhere on the line, by the way, wherever we want to thicken or to make it smaller. So then we can edit this again. We can edit this part. Oh yeah, just a side note, by the way, sometimes when you use different tools, it might add a control point. Don't mind it. Honestly, just don't mind it. There's no way you can delete it. So it's going to be there. Just a precaution, by the way. All right. So I'm guessing that's about it regarding how vectors work, the basic of vectors. So on the next topic, I'm going to be discussing how we're going to be working around with, vectors.